The news spread fast. By the next morning, almost everyone in the small town had heard the story. A stray dog, forgotten drain. 3 kittens saved just in time. But no one knew who the dog was, where he came from, or why he had stayed by that drain for so many days. Now the townspeople began to see him differently. Before, they had barely noticed the scruffy dog limping through the streets. He was just another stray in a tired old town. But after the rescue, people watched him with new eyes. They whispered to one another when they saw him. That's the one, they would say softly. The dog that saved the kittens. Daniel thought about the dog all night. He couldn't stop replaying the scene in his mind, the dog lying quietly beside the drain, refusing to leave, guarding the tiny helpless lives below. When the cafe opened that morning, Daniel didn't feel like working. He couldn't shake the feeling that the dog needed more than thanks. He needed help too. Late in the afternoon, Daniel packed up some leftover food and set out to find him. He checked the alleys, the old park, the small streets behind the shops. His heart sank with every empty corner. But then, near the old drain, Daniel spotted him. The dog was sitting in the same spot again, staring down into the drain. Daniel froze. His breath caught. Why was he still here? The kittens had been rescued. The drain was now empty. Yet here was the dog, eyes fixed on the dark gap below, his body tense. Slowly, Daniel approached. "Hey boy," he called softly. "What is it?" "They're safe now." But the dog didn't move. His gaze stayed locked on the drain. A cold chill ran through Daniel. Something wasn't right. He knelt beside the dog, listening carefully. Street was quiet. The wind rustled the leaves, and then a sound, so faint, so soft, it made Daniel's skin prickle. A thin, broken whimper. Not the kittens. Another voice. Daniel's heart began to race. He leaned closer, ear pressed to the cold metal. There it was again, a soft cry, deep in the drain, a sound of fear, of pain. Daniel's mind raced. Could there be another animal trapped below? Something they had missed? Without wasting a second, he pulled out his phone and called the rescue team again. His voice trembled as he spoke. "There's still something down here," he said quickly. "I can hear it. Please, come fast." When the team arrived, they too were puzzled. They had already cleared the drain. No one had seen anything else inside. But the dog was still watching. "Still guarding. Let's check again," the rescue leader said. The workers carefully lifted the grate again. Daniel held the flashlight and shone it down. Nothing moved. Only shadows. One of the rescuers lowered a rope ladder into the shaft and climbed down slowly. The air was damp and cold. He reached the bottom and began moving old debris aside. Then he called out, voice echoing up the stone walls. "I found something." Everyone above leaned in, breath held. A few minutes later, the rescuer emerged, holding a small bundle wrapped in a torn cloth. It was a tiny puppy, thin, shaking, too weak to stand. Its eyes blinked slowly, barely able to open. Gasps came from the crowd. How had they missed this? Daniel stared in shock. The dog beside him made a soft whine, as if in relief. His eyes followed the rescuers as they hurried the puppy to safety. The vet checked the puppy quickly. "This one is lucky," she said, "without him." She glanced at the stray dog, her voice softening. He wouldn't have lasted much longer. Daniel looked at the dog beside him with new wonder. He hadn't just saved the kittens. He had known there was still one more life in danger. He had stayed, watching, waiting, refusing to leave until all were safe. Daniel reached out and stroked the dog's head gently. "You're incredible," he whispered. His voice caught with emotion. The sun was setting again, painting the sky in soft orange. The townspeople stood quietly, touched by what they had seen. No one could explain how the dog had known, how he had sensed life below when others had not. But in that moment, they all understood something else. This stray dog was no ordinary animal. He had a heart larger than anyone could imagine, and Daniel knew one thing for certain. He could not let this dog live on the streets any longer. He had to. Help him. Most people walked past the old drain without a second glance. It sat at the end of Pinewood Avenue, rusty and forgotten. The metal cover was cracked in places, the stone around it stained with years of rain and dirt. The drain was nothing special, but the dog noticed. Every morning, just as the sky turned pale with the coming sun, the stray dog would appear. His coat was dirty, with patches of fur missing. His ribs showed through thin skin. One paw seemed a little stiff when he walked. He had no collar, no name that anyone knew. Yet the dog came back to the same place. Every day he would sit quietly in front of the drain. He didn't bark, he didn't wag his tail. He didn't even move much. He just stared down into the darkness. Below, at first people thought nothing of it. Stray dog, being curious. Maybe a rat lived down there. Maybe there was a strange smell. But as the days passed, a few people began to notice that this was not normal behavior. The dog wasn't distracted by food or by other dogs passing by. He simply kept coming back, sitting, watching Daniel. A young man who worked at the cafe nearby was one of the first to really pay attention. Every morning on his way to open the shop, Daniel would see the dog sitting there day after day. Rain or shine, it touched something in Daniel's heart. The dog looked tired, worn out, yet determined. There was something in the way he stared into that drain. Curiosity grew stronger in Daniel. One chilly morning, Daniel made a decision. He would try to help the dog. Maybe it was hungry. Maybe it needed care. On his way to the drain, Daniel stopped at the bakery and bought a small meat pie. The warm smell filled the air as he unwrapped it. "Hey, boy," Daniel called softly, kneeling a few feet from the dog. "You hungry?" The dog turned its head slightly, looked at Daniel for a moment, then stood up. But instead of eating the pie, the dog picked it up gently in his mouth and began to walk away. Daniel blinked, surprised. Something wasn't right. His curiosity now burned inside him. He stood up and followed. The dog moved with purpose, through narrow streets, across alleys, past crumbling old buildings. Daniel kept up, his heart racing, and then the dog stopped. Right. Back at the same drain, the dog placed the meat pie on the ground, nudged it toward the grate with his nose, and then lay down once more beside it. Eyes fixed on the dark gap below, Daniel knelt beside him. The morning air felt colder now. The street was empty and quiet. "What is it, boy?" Daniel whispered, leaning closer. Then he heard it. A faint, broken sound. At first Daniel thought it might be the wind, but no, there it was again. A soft whimper. A tiny cry rising from the depths of the drain. Daniel's pulse quickened. He pressed his ear against the cold metal.
Oh.
The sound was real, weak and desperate. Without a second thought, Daniel ran back to the cafe. He grabbed a flashlight and rushed to the drain. He switched on the beam and pointed it down into the dark. For a moment, he saw nothing. Just old wet stone, broken leaves, trash. Then something moved. Daniel's breath caught. His heart pounded in his chest. 3 small shapes lay huddled in a filthy pile of rags. Tiny kittens. One was barely breathing, its chest rising and falling ever so slightly. Another one twitched its ear, weak and cold. The third looked up at the light, blinking slowly, eyes wide with fear. Daniel swallowed hard. He turned to look at the dog, who stared back calmly. "You knew?" Daniel whispered. His voice trembled. The dog didn't move. He'd been waiting. Guarding Daniel pulled out his phone with shaking hands and called the local animal rescue. His words tumbled out in a rush. "There are kittens. In the drain. They're alive but weak. Please, hurry." When the rescue team arrived, they found Daniel still kneeling by the drain, the flashlight shining below. The dog remained at his post. As the rescuers moved closer, the dog let out a low growl. He didn't want anyone to harm the helpless creatures below. Daniel gently stroked his head. "It's okay, boy," he said softly. "They're here too." "Help." Slowly, the dog relaxed. The rescuers worked quickly, removing the old cover and lowering a small basket lined with soft towels. One by one, they lifted the kittens out. Their tiny bodies were cold and shaking. The vet on site examined them and shook her head. They wouldn't have lasted another night, she said quietly. A small crowd had gathered now. No one spoke. They simply watched the stray dog who had sat for days, protecting life that no one else had seen. Daniel knelt again beside the dog. The sun was setting now, casting long shadows. He reached out and stroked the dog's fur gently. "You saved them," Daniel whispered. The dog rested his head on Daniel's knee, eyes soft and calm. Sometimes true kindness comes without words. Sometimes it comes from those we least expect. Daniel could not sleep that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the stray dog's face. Those steady brown eyes, quiet patience, a deep loyalty. He kept thinking of how the dog had returned to the empty drain. He had refused to give up. How he had stayed until the last little life was safe. Daniel made up his mind. He would find the dog in the morning. He would take him home. No more lonely nights on the streets. No more hunger. No more cold. This dog deserved love at sunrise. Daniel packed some food, a soft blanket, and a leash. He hurried out, heart pounding with hope. He searched the alleys, the park, Pinewood Avenue. But the spot near the drain was empty now. The dog was gone. Worry filled Daniel's chest. Where could he be? He asked around the neighborhood. No one had seen him since last night. Daniel refused to give up. He searched for hours. Finally, in a narrow alley behind an old building, Daniel spotted a shape lying in the shadows. It was him, the stray dog. But something was wrong. The dog lay on his side, breathing shallow and slow. His eyes fluttered open when Daniel approached, but he did not move. His body looked weak, tired beyond words. "Hey, boy," Daniel whispered, kneeling. Beside him, "I'm here." Tears stung Daniel's eyes. The dog had used up all his strength. Day after day he had watched over the kittens, then the tiny puppy, never leaving, never eating enough, never resting. Now his body could take no more. Gently Daniel wrapped the blanket around him. Dog whimpered softly, too weak to resist. "It's okay now," Daniel said, voice shaking. "You're safe. I'm taking you home." He carried the dog in his arms all the way to the vet clinic. The vet. A kind woman named Dr. Harris acted fast. "He's badly dehydrated," she said. "Starved, too. His body is exhausted. But the will to live is strong in him." Daniel stayed by his side the whole day, stroked the dog's head, whispered softly to him. "You saved them," Daniel said. "Now it's my turn to save you." Slowly, the dog's breathing steadied. His eyes stayed on Daniel, as if he knew he was safe. Now word of the brave stray spread even further. People came by the clinic, bringing food, blankets, even toys. The town that had once ignored him now cared deeply for him. They finally gave him a name. Max. Daniel smiled when he heard it. Suited him perfectly. Strong name for a strong heart. Days passed. Max grew stronger, little by little. He started eating more, lifting his head, wagging his tail, just a little at first. Daniel visited him every day, and soon the bond between them grew. One afternoon, Dr. Harris said, "He's ready to go home." "But does he have someone?" Daniel didn't hesitate. "He does now," he said firmly. "He's coming home with me." So Max finally left the clinic, not as a stray, but his family. Daniel brought him to a small house with a warm bed, good food, and more love than Max had ever known. At first, Max was unsure. Soft couch, the clean water, the gentle touches. It was all new to him. But soon his tail wagged more. His eyes brightened. His strength returned. The kittens now, healthy, had all found good homes. The tiny puppy, too, had recovered well. Max visited them often with Daniel. The bond between them all was strong. One crisp morning, Daniel and Max walked down Pinewood Avenue. The old drain still sat at the end of the street, empty now, its dark days gone. Max stopped and looked at it for a long moment. Daniel watched quietly. "You remember?" he whispered. Max gave a small wag of his tail, then looked up at Daniel. "Come on, boy," Daniel said softly, smiling. "Let's go home." From that day on, Max was never alone again. He had a home, a friend. a life filled with love, and in the town, his story was told again and again. How a simple stray dog, tired, hungry, forgotten, had done what no human had done. He had listened. He had waited, had protected, and in doing so, he had saved for tiny lives and changed so many more. Sometimes true courage comes not with words, but with actions. Not with strength, but with heart. And Max had the biggest heart of all.